I am Debbie Sigris, the platform host today. Happy Sunday to everybody and welcome. We have a guest speaker this morning, and I will tell you a little bit about him. Rick Busby is a licensed Unity teacher, and his talk today is entitled The Illuminating Power of Faith. But first, we have some songs, affirmations, and announcements for you. And speaking of songs, our music today is performed by the dynamic duo of Leanne Atherton and Coleman Berg.
Let's start with our welcome song. Everybody sing along. Welcome to our family. We are all one. Inspired and spirit-led, transformed by love. Renew our minds so we see what is true. We built between me and you. Welcome to our family, where our love grows. Inspired and spirit-led, joy overflows. This is the place to start. You are the key. We've come to remind our hearts that we are free. You are welcome here. You are welcome here. I am welcome here. We are Happy Sunday, everybody.
Thank you, Leanne and Coleman. Awesome. This is a beautiful Sunday. Everybody is happy to be here. I'm happy to be here. Greet your friends with a wave, a message in the chat, or a virtual hug, whatever you're comfortable with. And I see Lissy. Hi, Lissy. There we go. There's a wave from Lissy. Awesome. I need a volunteer to read today's daily word. If you'd like to do it this week, please raise your, there's Lissy. All right, Lissy.
Right. Is there anybody in the waiting room?
No.
Huh. Okay, just us. Nobody here but us chickens. Okay, here we go. The word today is hope and faith. 2 words. This Advent, my hope leads me to unwavering faith in God. My belief in goodness of the world, others, myself, and God begins with hope. Maybe hope is all I can muster after a period of doubt or disappointment. As I feel hopeful, I begin to believe that new possibilities and better outcomes are available to me. My hopeful feelings lead to faith, a certainty that the goodness I could only sense before is the actual nature of life. With faith, I now direct my thoughts toward goodness, wholeness, and my heart's desires. With gratitude for my awakening, I use faith to dismantle doubt and limitations. I hold only the best thoughts for myself. I know and feel in the depths of my soul that the good I desire is already mine. With unwavering faith and deep gratitude, I claim it now. And from Psalm 62, verse 5, for God alone, my soul waits in silence, for my hope is from him.
Well, thank you, Leanne, for that beautiful song. As that idea of allowing sort of implies that idea of surrender and getting ourselves into alignment with spirit, sort of, operating in alignment with our true nature, operating in alignment with the truth of spiritual principle. Today, we are going to be talking about faith. The title of the talk today is The Illuminating Fire of Faith. And we'll talk about the choice of that word fire here more in just a few minutes. But as y'all know, we're at the first Sunday of Advent season, which feels, I don't know about y'all, but it feels a little odd to me to be already at the Advent Sunday just after Thanksgiving. But I guess that's kind of in general all the way it is, but it feels very compact this year to be talking about Christmas before November is even over. But here we are at the Advent season. And as I was freshening up on ideas around Advent and what that means to us, the way that Unity looks at it, Advent is intended as this time of preparation for the coming of the Christ, right? And we go through 4 Advent Sundays, and then we'll have the Christmas Eve celebration as well, which I think kind of is a 5th event during Advent season this year, the way it's lining up. But each one of these 4 weeks leading up to that has a theme attached to the Advent season. Today's theme is faith, also hope. And you'll recall the daily word just a few minutes ago about hope and faith. And we're going to talk about hope and faith as well and what those mean in the context of today's talk as we go there. Next week, I believe, is peace. And I think my good friend Neil Fireisel is your speaker next week, if y'all haven't met Neil before. I know some of y'all have. But Neil's a perfect speaker on peace. He's a Course in Miracles expert, aficionado teacher. So he knows quite a lot about the language of peace. So he's going to be an excellent speaker for you guys next week. And then I think third week is the theme is love, and the fourth week the theme is joy. So we've got these prevailing themes, and all of those are in anticipation of the coming of the Christ, and it's to prepare ourselves in consciousness for the coming of the Christ. And of course, we symbolically celebrate, acknowledge coming of the Christ each year in the Christmas. As A Course in Miracles reminds us, the second coming, so to speak, the coming of the Christ is always coming. It's not just like once a year. It's like it's an ongoing dynamic activity that every single moment that we are alive and breathing is what A Course in Miracles would call the holy instant, that moment in time, that opportunity for us to transform our lives. And of course, we don't just transform our lives one time, do we? It's an ongoing process. We're constantly in the process of transformation as we go. It's an ongoing evolution. I won't get into the weeds with this particular topic, but just think about the life progress, the life cycle of a butterfly. And we can look at that sort of metaphysically and symbolically and see how it goes through those stages to that ultimate expression as the butterfly. And in a certain way, that's like a microcosm of what it's like for us, except we have that transformational experience multiple times over the course of a lifetime. It's not just a one-time thing. Thank goodness. Thank goodness, because I would hate to think that I've already been through the transformation that I came here to do and that there's nothing else ahead. But there is a constant, ongoing, perpetual activity. The activity of the universe itself is ongoing and dynamic in perpetuity. And that's the way our lives are intended to be as well. And the power of faith in Charles Fillmore's sort of 12 powers framework, his cosmology around the 12 powers, the power of faith is our perceiving power. It's the power that allows us to perceive possibilities that do not yet exist. And it cooperates with the other 12 powers and everything to bring those into manifestation. And one of the misperceptions about faith that we have is that faith is something that we have faith in something. And while that's true, that's actually a misdirected focus for us to take, that faith is an actual active creative power. And that you and I, everybody, even if we've been through what we might consider a crisis of faith in our lives, in reality, at all times, we have perfect faith. We are expressing perfect faith at all points in time. The variable is, in what are we placing our faith? What are we choosing to have faith in? because faith, like all other spiritual principles and all other powers, it really operates sort of without prejudice, in the sense that it doesn't really have a say-so whether we're putting our faith in things that are negative to our experience, or whether we're putting our faith in things that are positive to our experience. The truth is we can do both, right? We are free to choose. We do have that free will, so to speak. And we are free to choose, but we're not necessarily free to escape the consequences of the choices that we put into motion. If we put our faith in things that are negative and deleterious to our experience, and we continue to do that over the course of time, we're going to reap the fruits and rewards and effects and consequences of those choices. Thankfully, gratefully, as A Course in Miracles reminds us, we have the capacity to choose again, right? We can always correct our course. If we've been choosing in a negative direction, a deleterious direction for ourselves, thankfully we can choose again and redirect our choices again. Of Course in Miracles language, once again, that choice that we're making between love and fear, love and fear, love and fear all the time, back and forth, oscillating back and forth. That when we choose in fear, we choose in that idea of separation, we choose in that idea of our littleness, that we don't have, that we're powerless and so forth, that we don't get stuck in that. We're able to choose again and redirect and think about our magnitude as opposed to our littleness as well. And that's the difference between perceiving, having faith in my own personal ego personality, or do I have faith and place my faith in the Christ presence that is within me? And I'm making that choice at all times, as are you, for yourself in your own lives, that we're choosing. Is it just me and what I can achieve of my own human limited self, so to speak, or is there something grander within me? And it's the power of faith that allows us to perceive that presence. It's the power of faith that allows us to perceive the presence of the indwelling Christ, to know that it's there, even though we don't have necessarily physical evidence that it's there. That faith is what allows us to perceive. In just a moment, we're going to talk about the faith like a rock, the idea of faith like a rock. Y'all have heard that before, right? Peter is the apostle that Charles has linked to the power of faith in the 12 powers cosmology. And Peter was that one, I'm going to establish my church upon this rock. And so that rock, that metaphor of the rock as a symbol of faith, has been with us for a couple thousand years now at this point in time. At the dawn of the 21st century, Michael Madej, who was an instructor at Unity Worldwide up there, he passed away about a year, 18 months or so ago. But back at the turn of the century, he put together this compilation that is basically the 12 powers for the 21st century. And they engaged several New Thought writers, Eric Butterworth, Robert Brummett, James Dillett Freeman, who y'all might know as the poet laureate of Unity, Barbara Marx Hubbard, Jim Rosemergy, who's a well-known Unity minister out of Florida. I think he just retired in the last year or so. But they put together, each one of these writers had one of the 12 powers, and they did a chapter on that. They were sort of reimagining the 12 powers 100 years down the road from Charles, and sort of reimagining what the 12 powers would look like in the 21st century, in the new millennium, right? This book is now out of print, but I believe if you're interested in it, it's an excellent book. If you're interested in the 12 powers, and you can probably find some pretty cheap copies actually through Amazon and everything, but it is presently out of print. I bring that up because I want to read a couple of the intro paragraphs of the chapter on faith, because it kind of casts the net for what we're doing here today. This chapter was written by Rosemary Ellen Gilley, is how I'm saying her name. It's Guiley, might be Guiley as well. But I'll read the first couple of paragraphs here because she makes some really, really relevant points, and I could probably riff on it, but she does a really, really good job at it. So she says, in every age, our perception of the qualities of faith changes in accordance with the times. During the ministry of Jesus, faith was likened unto a rock, the rock upon which Jesus declared he would build his church. Over the course of time, we have envisioned faith similarly as a steadying influence, calm, solid, unwavering, deep, and still. All of these qualities continue to hold fast, But for the new era of the 21st century, faith is more purposefully seen as a more energetic and active power. It is a fire. The fire of faith empowers and energizes. It purifies. It makes the torch that lights our daily lives and our spiritual path. It emblazons the way to God. The fire of faith calls us to action. The road ahead of us is clear, and we must use faith to erase fear. We must use faith to heal. We must use faith to work miracles. Faith operates in all aspects of life, not just the spiritual aspects of life. We need faith in order to manage our lives. We place our faith in certain laws of nature. We have faith in ourselves and in our abilities, talents, and skills. We have faith in our personal relationships. There is not one aspect of life that does not require faith in order to function at its optimum. Okay? So really, this is not just something that we trot out faith on Sundays and we go do our service and everything at church and everything. And so we're exercising and demonstrating our faith. We're demonstrating our faith literally with every choice we make, because every choice we make demonstrates in what are we placing our faith. If I'm placing my faith in if I'm attached, say, to my shame or a story of shame and guilt in my life that I can't seem to overcome, and I'm attaching my story to that shame, that's preventing me, that's limiting my experience. It's limiting the capacity for which I can express the fullness of who and what I came here to be, because that attachment to that story of shame is sort of dimming down my fire, as it will. But when I can shift my direction and go, oh no, there's a greater story beyond that, when I can perceive through the power of my faith, this active power of my faith, and I can perceive that there might be a greater possibility, even though my present circumstances would kind of give me evidence to the contrary, that with that active power of faith, I can perceive, no, there's another way through this. There's another choice I can make. There's another capacity that I can develop within me. There's another story I can tell myself about myself and my role in this. So it's one of those things where we have to, when we look at the power of faith as a fire versus the power of faith as a rock, you can start seeing some distinctions. That a rock also implies some other kinds of things, right? Steadfastness, strength. They've got a big enough rock. It takes a lot of energy and a lot of power to exert upon a rock, for example, to get it to move. A rock is more steadfast, right? It's not necessarily active. It's good to have that metaphor of faith like a rock that's immovable. Like my faith is solid and strong, and that's a good quality, but it's not the whole story. And it's just like the idea in the daily word today, the hope and faith idea in the daily word today, right? They use the word hope and faith interchangeably in Unity. And I'm going to make an argument that hope is like faith on training wheels. Hope is faith on training wheels. It's like, well, I hope it all works out. I get this for my birthday. You know, I hope I can make an A on the upcoming test. I hope. There's always that doubt, and there's always that implied in a hope is that something in the universe will act on my behalf. Maybe I'm hopeful that it will act on my behalf, right? And that I can achieve what I set out to achieve. So I'm like saying, once again, hope is like faith on training wheels, because faith is more like what's expressed in the scriptural reading, Hebrews 11, chapter 1. And I know y'all have all heard this before. This is a very well-known scripture. Now, faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. So you can see the faith is a much stronger, much more alive and active exercise of that power. Hope and faith are on a continuum together, right? But I would just posit to you and to myself as well that they're not necessarily equivalent. They're similar, but hope is not quite that conviction that faith implies. And so when we're looking at having faith like a rock, okay, that steadfast assurance. No, this is what I believe to be true, and I'm going to stand in alignment and in accordance with that. That's a positive quality that the metaphor of the rock implies, right? That steadfastness, that the capacity to persevere. I would argue that that capacity that we have for that is not necessarily associated with the power of faith, but it's more associated with the power of what Charles would call our strength. The power of strength is also one of the 12 powers, and the power of strength is our capacity to persevere, our capacity to endure, right? So we have that capacity. So I'm saying like that aspect, that steadfast aspect, is probably more akin to the power of strength and perseverance that we have rather than the power of faith. The power of faith is much more dynamic. And as I said a moment ago, you and I, we have and have always had perfect faith. That whatever we're placing our faith in, we're going to have that experience. So the variable is not that we have variations in our capacity for faith, that we have perfect faith, that we're demonstrating that at all times. The variable is, as I said, in what are we placing our faith? Are we placing our faith in our littleness, or are we placing our faith in our greatness? And we are making that choice. And sometimes people close in our lives, even well-meaning people, sometimes people have ill intentions for us as well, and would try and talk us down out of our magnitude, would try and talk us down out of our creative power. Julia Cameron's work in The Artist's Way is all about that, right? It's all about that creative recovery from those stories and experiences we had earlier in our life, even with well-meaning people in our lives, people that love us, that said something errantly or did something errantly that stunted our capacity to develop our creative capacity. And so Julia Cameron's work in The Artist's Way is about recovering that creative power from all of those kinds of stories. But first we have to perceive, we have to see with the power of our faith, even though it's not yet in manifestation, we have to see that possibility. We have to see that creative possibility resides within us. We have to see that creative power center that we have, that Charles articulates as the 12 powers, that I have it, you have it, everyone has it. The variable is, what are we doing to develop it? Are we developing it? Are we not developing it? If we don't develop it over the course of time, just like with muscles, if we don't develop them over the course of time, they become atrophied, right? And they don't work as they're intended. So we have to condition our 12 powers. We have to consciously employ them. And as we consciously employ them, we increase our power of creativity. We increase our power to express love. We increase our power to express compassion, empathy, peace, joy, all of the positive attributes. That the more that we are willing to align ourselves with our 12 powers and to perceive the outcome of that, even before it's in reality. And it's the power of faith that allows us to do that. So I'm talking on here, and I don't have a clock in front of me, so I don't want to let me look here real quick. So y'all, I just for as a matter of y'all's procedures and everything, I'm assuming y'all do the meditation after the talk. Is that what we're leading up here to? Okay, good. And do y'all have an extended period of silence? Like how long is y'all's period of silence and silent contemplation? Is it just a short period, or is it an extended period?
We actually
5 minutes. Say that again.
do a meditation song, and then Coleman kind of accompanies you, and if you would like, before your meditation, we do a
Okay,
song.
good. Yeah, that'll be perfect. I'll start kind of leading us there here in a moment. We'll set that up. But in conclusion here, as we're thinking about this, one of the things I want to leave you to think about is that the power of faith, like all of the 12 powers for that matter, is not intended to be used independently of the other 12 powers. Anytime we would use any of our 12 powers not in alignment with the other 11 that go along with it, our life is going to be out of balance. For example, power of love. Let's just say I try to divorce my power of love from my power of wisdom and discernment. If I try to divorce my power of love away from my sense of understanding and divine order. And I just decide that I love drugs, and I'm just going to pursue drugs regardless of whatever else happens around me. And people do that. I mean, that happens all the time, to where we get out of sorts and we fall in love with something that is actually deleterious to our experience, right? And so all good judgment goes out the window. We know we're headed down a path of destruction, but we keep choosing in that direction because we love the experience. The universe is actually not going to stop you from making that choice, because you have got self-will. We have a power of will, right? Power of will is our executive power. It's our power to choose. And as I said earlier in the talk here, you are free to choose, but you will experience the consequences and effects of the choices you put into motion. And if those are good for you, if those are working for you, then continue choosing in that direction. But if they get out of sorts and out of balance for you, you can choose again, and probably should, choose again to correct course. But we're all on our own paths, and we're all on our own journeys. And if we have faith and trust in that divine order, that divine guidance that's always at operation in our lives, then we know that all things lead towards good for those that love God. That's what the scripture says, right? All things lead towards good for those that love God. That could also be all things lead to good for those that love truth, right? That if I get myself into alignment with spiritual principle and act in accordance and in alignment with spiritual principle, the outcome is going to be good. But if I misuse spiritual principle, I can get off course. Thankfully, oh my God, thankfully, I can correct course. Because if I wasn't able to correct course, I'd have been on the rocks a long time ago, and with no hope of recovery. Anybody had that experience, or am I just talking to myself? That's right. But it was in those cases, like looking back before I had this language of unity in my consciousness and had a way of seeing my experience and framing my experience. It just seemed to be all disconnected and random, and I didn't see it was happening to me back then as opposed to happening for me, right? And when things are happening to us, we have that perception of things happening to us. We can slip into that victim story really easily. Well, I could have this and I could have that and I could be successful if this, that, and the other wasn't happening in the world and these things weren't happening to me. But what if they're happening for you instead of to you? Then it becomes a different question, a different proposition for us to then move into that consciousness that says, how can I allow this experience? Help me to see how this experience can transform my life. What do I need to learn here? Because I'm stuck in this gear. I'm stuck in this mud right here. I'm stuck in this dysfunction right here. Help me to see the lesson I need to learn so that I can shift gears and move back into a fuller expression in my life. And thank God, once again, that we have that capacity, that power to choose again, to simply choose again, to exercise our will again. But it's that power of faith that in that crisis of faith, have y'all ever had a crisis of faith? What we call a crisis of dark night of the soul, anything like that? That's what those are. That's a crisis of faith. It doesn't mean the faith is gone. It means that I'm unable to see. I've got blocks in my awareness to the presence of the powers that are available to me. And when I'm in that crisis, when I can't see, it doesn't mean it's gone away. It just means that I've got stuff in my way that needs to be removed so I can clear my vision. We're in the month of November. We're at the tail end of November, right? So we got a couple more days, but the month of November in Charles's 12 Powers calendar, the month of November, the power of the month is the power of renunciation, the power of elimination, which that window right behind me there that looks sort of reddish orange, rusty looking, that's the power of elimination here in the 12 Powers Chapel here at Unity Church of the Hills. And that power of renunciation is our power, our capacity to say no so that we can say yes to something greater. So if we need to move a problem, a dysfunction, an addiction, a bad relationship, a bad employment situation, whatever the case may be, and we can say no to that, We can renounce that. We can eliminate that so that we can open ourselves back up to the greater possibility. But once again, that renunciation wouldn't even really come into play unless the power of my faith was in play also, that said, you know what, Rick, there's another way for you to go about this that could improve the quality of your life. You don't have to continue choosing in this direction. But if you want to make some choices in a new direction, you're going to have to say no to some things to clear the way for the new to come in. And that's what we're preparing for here in Advent season. This is a symbolical way for us to go through this time of year, each year, year in and year out, and sort of in a collective way for us to all acknowledge this coming of the Christ into the world. And that this Advent season is intended for us to bring these qualities of the Christ into our active consciousness and to prepare ourselves for that symbolic, because that's really what it is. Christmas Day is really kind of a symbolic way of us acknowledging the birth of the Christ. And we acknowledge that in the form of the baby Jesus, right? But what did Jesus say to us? What I can do, you can do. If Jesus is the Christ and I can do what Jesus does, if Jesus is the Christ and you can do what Jesus does, then you too are the Christ. So we're not preparing ourselves to celebrate the birth of Jesus only symbolically. We're celebrating what his birth symbolizes for us in our own lives. And that is the presence of the indwelling Christ within me, the presence of the indwelling Christ. And we have the powers to allow us to animate that, activate that, and express that in the world. And that's what this Advent season and the Christmas season is about. Despite all the gift giving, right? Despite all the parties and all the kinds of things that we tend to do in the Christmas season, that spiritually speaking underneath it, that we lose sight of this to our own detriment, not really in the long term, because all things work towards good, but we delay our good. We don't keep it away from us permanently. We simply delay it when we don't do that work in consciousness. So I encourage you, as we go through the rest of the Christmas season, the Advent season, that y'all take this time, this Advent season, and take that idea of this time of preparation, this time of anticipation for the coming Christ, knowing that the Christ in you is always coming. As I mentioned at the top here in that Course in Miracles idea, the idea of the holy instant, that every instant, every encounter, every experience, every connection that we have with someone is a holy encounter. And it's a holy encounter because each of those instances is an opportunity to continue the transformation that we've already engaged in. You've already engaged in it. You've been transforming all of your life. Do you still feel like there's more that you can do, more that you could express? Then if you feel that way, then the Advent season still has value to you, because we go through this spiritual ritual year in and year out, and we continue to prepare ourselves for the coming of the Christ. And the Christ is always coming. And thank God that's true. Thank God that's true. Because if we didn't have that possibility, if we weren't able to perceive that possibility to transform our lives, you think we got problems now. If we weren't able to perceive that we could overcome this, it would really be a sad day here on earth. It would really be tough times. It would be hopeless at that point in time. But thank goodness, thank God, thank love, thank all the gods for that matter, right? That they bring this awareness to us that there's this perpetual regeneration that's available to us. Next month's Power of the Month in December is the power of life in the 12 powers thing. And that power of life is the generative power. So that's what we're doing. We're going into that season of life. We're going into that, and we have that generative power available to us. So I'm just encouraging each one of you. We're going to take this into meditation here now and kind of take this a little bit deeper. But just as we move through the month in this Advent season, I'm setting my own intention to go through it a little differently this year than I have in the past, to really kind of turn the volume up a little bit. Look at each one of these themes each week. This week is faith. Next week is peace, then love, then joy. And like really take those in, like bring those into, because that is our capacity. That is our Christ-like potential to demonstrate those. And that's what it would mean for the Christ to be born in you this Advent season, for the Christ to be born in me this Advent season. So I'm with you all, you know, in that pursuit. I will certainly be holding you all in prayer as the month progresses as well, holding you all in consciousness. And with that, let's just let all that go. Let's let Leanne and them lead us into our meditation time here with meditation song, and then we'll spend a few moments in that contemplative space.